We're joined now by Nathan Hall. Hello, Nathan. Who's going to be discussing issues around dissertations. We are swapping roles now, so that Nathan is going to be asking me the questions, and we've also got, I hear, a game that we're going to be playing shortly, which I'm looking forward to. So over to you, Nathan.
We'll save the delights of the game for a little while. But okay, so we've got a handful of questions. I think that a number of dissertation students always ask us in the build-up to preparing their work. And the first, I think, is really, how do you get from an idea for a dissertation to a research question?
Okay, that's probably harder than it first appears. And one thing that I would say that you need to do a lot of to get to between the idea and the research question is a lot of reading. And I think sometimes students underestimate the amount of reading that they would need to do in order to write their research proposal. So when they write their research proposal, often for our students at level 5, it really needs to be a fairly fixed set of ideas that's not just, I want to write a lot of stuff about a particular topic, but quite a narrowed down version of the initial idea. So first of all, I would say that you need to read. You need to do a fairly comprehensive literature review on the area, and then try to narrow it down a little bit to get to those aims, those real specific aims. And when I think students are thinking about specific aims, it's really important not to be too one-dimensional. So often students will email or pick up the phone or come in and they'll say, well, I want to do my dissertation on, I'll give the example of serial killers, for example.
That's not in our game, so you're all right.
Oh, okay. And so they'll say, and I might say, well, what in particular about serial killers? And that's the issue. It's got to be more specific than everything I know about X. So, for example, if you wanted to do something on the public perceptions of the police, for example, rather than just having it on the public perceptions of the police, why not add in another variable? So does it make any difference depending on what age you are in terms of the public perceptions? Does the impact of the media play a part in that? Does it make a difference if you've made contact with the police in the past or if they've made contact with you? So something similar would be electronic tagging and conviction rates. If you wanted to look at the link between those two, but also add in something else. Does it matter what crime you've committed? Whether there's a likelihood of you going on to be reconvicted? Does it make a difference what age you were when you committed that first offence, for example? So when you're trying to get from the general idea of I like this topic to your research question, lots of reading, lots of research, and try to narrow it down. Probably narrow it down more than you think is necessary right from the beginning.
And of course that makes it far more manageable for the students as well.
Absolutely. I think when students first start and they think I've got to write for undergraduate, I've got to write 10,000 words, they think, well, really, I need to talk about world politics just as a minimum, because 10,000 words is such a huge amount to fill. But actually, we'll talk about this later on when we talk about structure. You really need it to be as narrow as possible in order to give yourself scope to go into enough depth on the particular topic, rather than writing a little bit about all of the topic.
And actually, in my experience, the question becomes not how do I fill 10,000 words, but how do I keep it down to 10,000 words? So
Absolutely.
we'll come back to that. Okay, so second question we've got here, so is what are the different types of dissertation that students can do?
Okay, lots and lots of different types of dissertation, and the important point, I think, at this stage is to say that no one type of dissertation is seen to be better than another type of dissertation. And I think sometimes there's an impression that to do primary research is a much better idea than to do a literature review, for example. And I would often say to students, well, if you've got a really good idea for some primary research, excellent. But if you're going to be asking a group of friends what they think about something, maybe that won't add to the dissertation. So really give that some thought right from the beginning. But lots of different types. There's primary research, so that's actually going out and doing some research. I've got a student at the moment who's doing something on arson, for example, and why young people commit the crime of arson. You might want to look at secondary type research project, which would mean analysing data that's already out there. So you might be doing that with British Crime Survey data, for example. You might be doing that through looking at original newspaper reporting. So it's secondary data analysis, so that would be secondary research. One thing that students often don't think about is doing case study research. I quite like a case study dissertation because it enables you to go really in-depth on a particular topic. I had a student recently who wanted to do a dissertation on crime prevention, and particular situational crime prevention, and she decided that she would do a case study on ion detectors and drug trafficking and drug mules. So her first chapter was about crime prevention, her second chapter was on situational crime prevention, how you can use sort of hardware and technology to try and stop people from committing crime. And then her third chapter was a case study on these ion detectors and how they had significantly reduce the amount of drug trafficking in a particular country. And then she concluded it by coming back to the issue about crime prevention. So there's case study approach, which I do quite like and we don't see very much of. And also there's literature reviews, which are a perfectly valid and acceptable and enjoyable dissertation to get involved with, which are library-based, literature-based, and can really get into depth on looking at work that's already been published. So lots of different types, all equal in terms of their credibility.
No hierarchy. Now, what was interesting in that response there is that you started to talk about what might appear in chapters of dissertations.
Yes.
And this is where we're going to play our little game.
Yes.
And you're looking,
about this.
You're looking a little nervous. What we've got here on these cards, there's 5 here.
Okay.
And I've made up some dissertation titles.
Okay.
And what I'm going to ask you to do is to choose one without seeing it.
Yes.
And then tell us how you think that you would, if this was you, structure the dissertation on the basis of the subject that's in front of you.
Okay.
Okay?
I'll pick one in a moment. I'm not delaying, I promise. This is such a crucial part of writing the dissertation, is the structure of the dissertation. Yes. And I often say that you should try and treat a dissertation almost like the old-fashioned egg timer shape. That you need to start broad, you need to narrow it down in the middle, and you need to broaden it out towards the end. And you should be looking generally, for a 10,000 word dissertation, you're looking generally at about 4 different chapters. Yeah. Sometimes you can do 3, sometimes you can do 5, but generally I would say 4 chapters. Sadly, sometimes you see dissertations coming in from students who haven't had contact with their supervisor, and you've got a 9 or 10 chapter dissertation, which really doesn't work. Everything is too short and too piecemeal.
You have no time to discuss anything in any detail.
Absolutely right. So, what I hope to achieve from this game is to see that there is a basic principle of structuring a dissertation that is fairly simple to pass across different topics, whatever the topic might be.
Do we have to
delay that? Okay.
Right, okay, here we go, folks.
I haven't seen these, by the way, so is this a good one to go for? Okay, so this student has decided to do a dissertation with the title Prison Violence, Causes, Effects and Solutions. Straight away I've got 2 words there. I've got prison and I've got violence. So if we go back to the egg timer analogy, you need to start off by making sure that you as a student let your reader know the situation that we're currently in.
Yes.
You must assume that your reader has no particular specialist knowledge of the subject. So really in those early chapters, you are really setting the scene for what comes later on, which is the focus of your dissertation. So I would say if I was doing a dissertation on prison violence, I would first of all need to outline what the situation is, what the context is. Now, we know that we've got a problem with prison violence in our prisons at the moment. Much of that is due to the fact that we've got increased numbers of prisoners, decreasing number of prison staff, we've got a very different mix of prisoners as well, and there is not enough purposeful activity for those prisoners to get involved with. The reader needs to know all of that. So I would say my first chapter would be on the context of the prison environment as it currently stands.
And how much historical context would you say should be included in that?
I wouldn't go too far back, because I think there's a tendency to think, right, I'll start talking about the birth of the prison, and we'll go back to the panopticon and I'll draw a diagram. I think we just need the current context of the prison environment that we've got at the moment. In the second chapter, I've spied an opportunity for a case study. In the second chapter, I think I would talk about prison violence. So I would outline what the issues are around prison violence. Now, you've mentioned here that you want to look at causes, effects and solutions. So in terms of solutions, this could lend itself to a case study, because you could have a third chapter which looks at maybe a particular programme that a particular prison has been involved with to try to reduce prison violence. And you could go into quite a lot of depth on that. You know, you could write to the prison, see if you could find out more information about it. You could look at maybe anger management, you could look at alcohol abuse issues. So you could do a case study on a particular programme. And then your fourth chapter, as is often the case with 4 chapters, is almost your analysis. Right, we've got these 3 chapters, we know about the prison, we know about the issue of violence, we know that there is this kind of solution. What does this mean? Where are we going to go from here? What are other countries doing? What are the kind of other issues that might help us? And going back and looking at all the things that we've talked about before. Would that work for you?
I think that would, and that would allow you then to use signposting between the chapters to highlight the different issues that emerge and how they reappear in different parts of the dissertation. I think that would be very useful.
And chapter 4 would also link back to chapter 1 again, which is quite nice because you make it a more circular piece then, and it all links together, as you say. You'd raise the issues again of what we need to do with the current prison context, i.e. the too many people and the not enough officers, which would inevitably address the problem.
And of course, doing that in the last chapter by relating it to almost the literature review at the start allows students to point out to their supervisor, to the marker, to anybody who's reading it, how they have then perhaps advanced, even if just a little bit, the knowledge of the subject area.
Absolutely. So we started with this information. I've then done this analysis, and now we're just that little bit further on, and that's after all the aim of academic pursuits, isn't it? To try and just advance the knowledge just that bit further on.
Absolutely.
Have we
Good.
passed then that one?
I think you can pass that one, but obviously a sample of one is not really enough. So
I'm going for this one.
Are you? Okay.
Oh, okay. This one is A Relic from History, a critical discussion of the relevance and effectiveness of the jury system.
I knew I'd get history in something.
Now that's a tricky one, as you well know, thank you very much, because it is quite difficult to do, as with the prison violence, you wouldn't be able to do any primary research on this.
Yeah.
But obviously the case study approach you could think of. With jury system as well, primary research is very, very difficult, even for academic staff to do research into juries because people can't talk about it afterwards. I think you could do a focus on lay justice with this one, because as ever when you're planning your structure, you start, my topic is juries, but just broaden it out a bit for your early chapters. You might want to do a chapter on the role of lay justice within the criminal justice system, chapter 1. Chapter 2, you could then look at the history and background of the jury system as we have it in this country. You could then in a chapter 3 look comparatively, I suppose, couldn't you, at other countries and what they're doing with how they manage the process in other countries. And then chapter 4 could be your analysis. You're looking at the 3 previous chapters. What is the role of lay justice? What do we know about the role of lay justice? And what we do know, as you know, is that the more that people are involved in the criminal justice system, the more moderate their views become about what we should do about offenders. So you could finish off again by bringing it back to the initial issue, which is about maybe increasing the number of lay practitioners within the system.
And of course that comparative approach would allow for a really critical discussion of the strengths and weaknesses of something that is often regarded as almost unique and quaint in terms of being English or British.
Absolutely, just broaden it out a little bit to international issues. Excellent.
Good. Okay, would you like another one or shall we move on?
Let's move on. I think I've got way more, so I think we'll carry on.
Okay, so we've just got a couple more questions in the time remaining to us, and I think this is probably a really, really important one, and it's important for the student, it's important for the supervisor as well. Is what is the role of a supervisor?
Oh, goodness me. And for our distance learning students, just please make contact with your supervisors, absolutely. I think you'll understand this, Nathan, that you can see a dissertation that's been well supervised, and you can see a student really that unfortunately hasn't contacted their supervisor, and it's such a critical role. And as soon as you find out who your supervisor is, make that early contact, because they can really help in those initial stages. And so the role, particularly in those early stages, is to offer advice on methods, to offer advice on ethical submission, if that is necessary for your dissertation. And also I think one of the most critical elements is to approve your plan. So hopefully your dissertation supervisor will say, well, what are your plans, what are your aims, what are you thinking of for your chapters? Write it down on one side of A4 and send it to your supervisor, and they can approve it and say, that might not work that way, have you thought about maybe focusing on that particular issue, maybe swap those chapters around, so that then you've got a plan, it's been approved, you've then got to go away and write the chapters. I know that seems like the easy bit, but actually
it's a crucial bit.
Once you've got the structure in place, it's just a matter of writing it, and that's often not too difficult once you've got the structure in place. We've got some questions coming as well, excellent, thank you. Yes, absolutely, approving the plan, advice on ethics, advice on methods, reading draft chapters, absolutely crucial. So as you finish a draft chapter, send it to your supervisor, they can read it, comment on it, send it back to you. You do that 4 times, you've then got 4 chapters, lots of comments, then build it together in that dissertation. And of course, if you need it, they're there for personal support as well.
Absolutely. I often find when I'm supervising, particularly distance learning students, that it's really a two-way learning process as well. Some of the conversations you have is quite often you'll have an academic who perhaps has the expertise drawn from research and knowledge from that side of things, but you have students, particularly at distance learning, who are living and breathing some of the subjects that they're perhaps talking about, and actually those conversations that draw those two worlds together can be really, really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Good. Okay. So, role of the supervisor. Most importantly, get in touch early
Absolutely.
and agree what you're going to do and how the relationship is going to work, and perhaps even set some deadlines for draft chapters that you agree with your supervisor. That's fantastic. Okay. And finally, what makes a good dissertation?
Aha, excellent.
Or an excellent dissertation.
An excellent, that's what we're aiming for, absolutely. An awareness of the literature, absolutely. You've got to show that you're aware of not only the traditional literature in the area, but the very current literature as well. There's got to be really clear aims, not everything I know about serial killers, but really clear aims, critical analysis all the way through, well presented, well written, clearly written, and as we were talking about with Martin Hampton earlier, signposting throughout as well. I think we've got time. We've got a couple of, if you want to pick out maybe a couple of questions.
Okay.
The ones at the bottom maybe, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from Nicola who's watching with us, and she asks, what stage in the degree should you be thinking about dissertation ideas? And Nicola's in the first year.
Now, Nicola, I would say, to be honest, if you're doing something and you're fascinated by it and it's a topic that you really like, start developing those ideas now, start reading around those ideas now. Talk with a member of staff who you think might have some expertise in the area. It's never too early, is it, to have that chat with a member of staff?
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course that allows you to monitor a subject as it evolves, because quite often these subjects change rapidly from the turn the student starts their degree to doing their dissertation. And if you can develop that relationship with a potential supervisor just through conversation and exploring ideas, I always welcome that, because if you can hit the ground running, and if the first time you have a conversation with a student is not after you've just marked something that they've submitted, that makes life so much easier, because you can guide students with the creation of their proposal, where to go with their literature review, and those grown-up conversations, I think, are really, really useful things to have.
So now, Nicola.
Absolutely. And a second question, which I think is also from Nicola, very quickly, how do students choose their subject?
I think this is quite a tricky one. I've said to students before, just grab a book off a shelf and just glance through. I don't know what subject Nicola's doing, but if it was criminology, pick up the handbook of criminology, just flick through. But most importantly, choose an area that you're interested in. If you're not interested in it at the beginning, you're not going to be interested in it 18 months later when you've sweated buckets on it. So it's got to be something that fascinates you, really. And hopefully the subject does, otherwise you wouldn't have chosen it in the first place.
And it's something you live with for a long time, doing dissertation, and live and breathe, and it'll fill your spare time and so on. So the interest is the key issue, I think, for me. Yes, excellent.
Probably
Okay,
got
so those
time
are
for another
Nicola's
one, I think.
questions. We do? Okay. Okay, perhaps one thing that is particularly interesting here, do I need to fill in ethics forms?
Well, if you're going to be doing some primary research, absolutely you need to fill in the ethical forms, and do get some advice from your supervisor on that. They're quite complex, they're quite time consuming, but it is really, really important that they are filled in correctly, because you do need to get ethical approval from the ICGS Ethics Committee before any research can be conducted. If, however, you're going to be doing a literature review, if you're going to be doing case study analysis, secondary analysis, then you don't need to do that.
And do it in good time.
And do it in good time, absolutely. Thank you very much for helping me out on the sofa.
Pleasure.